What's up guys, there is Cousin here. Today, I'm super excited because we're doing the first ever React Code Challenge on the channel and we're starting with an event calendar from scratch. Now, there's two ways that you can approach this. You can either take it chill, sit back, relax, and just watch and enjoy me solving the whole thing. Or if you're brave, if you're feeling adventurous, you can check out the GitHub repository and try to solve it yourself. It'll be in the description and then you can come back here and see exactly how you did. No matter which way that you pick, it's totally fine. I'm super excited. Let's get into it. All right, so let's begin. In front of us, we have a big, beautiful, empty screen with nothing on it, which means that we can let our imagination run wild and literally build anything that we want. For this challenge, what I'm thinking of doing is something like this. This is your typical monthly calendar view. You have the current month here and the current year, and then you see all of the calendar days for that specific month, and you have all of the weekdays over here. I'm thinking of doing this and not doing something more complicated, like having the user be able to navigate between the different months, or even showing a weekly view or even a daily view. I think this is enough, and for our events, because we are making an event calendar, we're just going to put all of our events for the specific days inside of this square right here. I think that'll be good enough. This is our starting point. We have a simple event calendar component that's currently empty, right? We're going to have to do the implementation ourselves. And this component is being used inside of this app component right here. So we're importing event calendar here at the top on the first line, and then we're using it in the JSX like so. Now, the important thing to note here is that we're passing some events as props. So we'll need to handle those events in our event calendar to show them on the actual calendar. Every single event will have a date property and will have a title property. And this date here, we've used the sub days and add days that come directly from date FNS. They're simple functions that allow us to add certain days to a date like we've done here, and then subtract certain days to a date like we've also done here. In this challenge, we're going to use date FNS quite a lot. We're actually going to use it for most of the things that we want to do with our calendar. And we'll also be using another library called CLSX. It's a simple utility that allows us to customize the tailwind classes that we give to our components. But don't worry about this. We'll see those as we actually build our event calendar. All right, now before we get to actually building out the event calendar, I want to mention something really quickly. If you've ever had to do any sort of web scraping, like scraping data off of websites, you probably know that that's quite a difficult and sometimes annoying thing to do. There's a lot of obstacles that you have to get over. Well, I actually have a solution for that, and it's called the scraping browser from Brightdata, which are actually the sponsors of this video. So what this is this is a browser that you can connect to easily through code, and you can solve a lot of these problems automatically through it. You have proxy rotation and cooling, you have automatic captcha solving, browser fingerprinting, automatic retries, and a lot more. And the great thing about this is that it's super easy to implement, and you can literally do it with a single line of code. I mean, honestly, just look, they're showing you exactly how simple it is right here. The only thing that you have to do is just connect to their browser using your username and password, and the rest of your code stays identical, which means that this can easily integrate with your existing web scraper. It works super easily with things like Puppeteer, Playwright, and Selenium, so no matter what you're using, you can easily integrate it if that means you want to do it in Python or you want to do it in Node.js. If you want to check it out, which honestly I highly recommend, it'll be the first link in the description, and bonus, you're also going to get $10 off as soon as you make an account. Thank you once again to Brightdata for sponsoring this video, and now we can go back to building our event calendar. Cool, so let's begin. Now the first thing that I want to do is I want to build this header right here that gives us the current month and the current year. So first, let's start small. Let's even hard code this, and let's just see what we can come up with. So I'll come here, I'll make a new div, and then I'm going to make an H2, and I'm going to say November 2023 because that is the current month and the current year. Let's go back to our application and see what we have. There we go. We have November 2023. Now what I'm thinking of doing is I just want to add some container classes to the entire thing, and also some margins on the left and right, and maybe some padding, and also center this text in the middle so that it looks a little bit more like this. So let's do that. Let's come here. Let's go to our main div, the outer div, and do class name. And we're going to do container mx auto for the margin, and then we'll give this a padding of, let's say, 4. And then in our H2, we're going to make this in center. So we'll do class name. We're going to give this text center, and let's save and see what we have. There you go. We have this nice little date here that's currently hard coded, but at least it's there, and it's the first steps to our actual calendar. So now let's change this date to actually have it come from a date variable so that it always represents the current month and date that we're on. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to create and store a variable for the current date because we're going to use this a lot more in this component. So I'll come here, I'll do const current date equals new date. And then here, instead of just hard coding it, we're gonna come and we're gonna make use of the format function from datefns. So we'll do format, import this from datefns, we'll give this current date, and then we have to give it the format string, which will be month, 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 year, 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 year. You can look at the documentation for these actual strings, but this will give you November 2023. Let's go back to our application, and there you go, we have the same date, and now this comes directly from an actual date, which will change every single day that we use this application. Now, the next thing that I want to build is I want to think about the structure of our calendar, and I want to handle these weekdays right here. So we have Sunday all the way through Saturday, and we have to think of a way that we can render any arbitrary number of days, of calendar days, in a way that's always going to fit within a grid. Here we have 7 columns for the 7 days of the week, and no matter what month or year we're in, this should always work, and this should be really simple. That's the way that I want to approach this. I want to make a simple API that will work regardless of the current month and year. So what I'm thinking of doing is I'm thinking of creating a grid and setting that grid to have 7 columns, and then no matter what we render within that grid, it should always work out because we're always going to have 7 columns, and as long as we can make sure that we're rendering properly all of our days, everything should theoretically work exactly as we expect. So let's try it. Let's come here, let's make a new div, and then here I'm going to give this a class name of grid, and then grid calls 7, and then we're also going to make a little bit of a gap between each item, so we'll do gap and then 2. And then let's create our weekdays. So here at the top, I'm going to create a new constant. I'm going to do const weekdays equals, and there you go, Copilot is being super helpful. It's giving me all of the days. And then let's try just mapping over every day and see what we come up with. So we'll do weekdays.map day, and then for each day we are going to return a div with the day, and then we're going to give the day as a key. So we'll do key day, and the reason why we can give the day as a key is because if we look at this array here, we have no duplicate keys, right? No day is going to be called the same, so we can safely give the day as the key because that is going to be unique for every single day. If I save this and go back now to our application, we have our weekdays here, which is looking really great. We've made some important steps. Now, I might want to add a little bit of spacing between this header here and the actual weekdays, and also I'm not sure how obvious this is, but I want to have these centered and maybe even bold, because let me just show you. If I come here and I do class name border, if I save this, you're going to see that they're not centered, right? So we want to center these, make them bold, and then make a little bit more space between the header and the individual weekdays. So we'll come back to our application, we'll come here to our header, and we'll add a class name, and then we're going to do class name, and then we'll do margin bottom 4, and then here for each individual day, instead of border, we'll do font bold, and then we'll do text center, and that should give us exactly what we want. And there you go. Everything is bold, it's centered, and it's looking nice. Then the next step for us is to render out each individual calendar day. So how are we going to do this? Well, we have to think here and be smart a little bit, and we have to think about the things that we need to render out every single day in a calendar. So the first thing that we need is we need the first day of the month, right? That's a given. And then we also need the last day of the month. And then we need an array between the first day in the month and the last day of the month so that we can loop over those. Now, thankfully, because we're using datefns, we can actually do all of this quite simply using a few of the functions that datefns provides. So let's start. Let's do const first day of month. That's going to be equal to start of month. Import this from datefns. We give it the current date. And then we're going to do const last day of month. That's going to be not start of month, end of month. Import this from datefns and give it current date. And just like that, we have an end of month function, a start of month function, and these are really useful because it makes working with dates super easily. So now we're going to come here, make a new line, and now we're going to get an array of all of the dates between the first day of the month and the last day of the month. And the way that we're going to do that is with another really cool function from datefns. So I'm going to come here and do const days in month equals each day of interval, and you want to import this again from datefns, and then give this an object, and then all you do is you do start and end. We give it the first day of the month as start the last day of the month as the end. And now we have an array of dates that we can map over and use in our component. That is the power of using something like datefns. Cool, so now let's come here to our component, and right below our weekdays, let's render out the actual days in the month. So I'll come here and I'll do days in month.map. And then for every day, we are going to come here, and then we're going to return a div. And then we're going to do this. We're actually going to let Copilot do the work. So again, we're going to use the format function from datefns. We're going to pass it the current day, and then we're just going to render out the actual day. And now we also need to give this a key as usual in React. So we'll do key. And here we're actually going to give this the index. And the reason why we can give this the index, and usually it's recommended not to, is because this list is not going to change across renders, right? We're always going to have the same month, and then we're always going to have the same first and last day of the month. So these days are going to be static. So in that case, you actually can use the index. But as soon as these days change, for example, if our current date was ever going to change, this would no longer be valid, and we would have to use something else instead of the key, just to make sure that it's always unique across different renders. Great. So now with this, let's go back to our application and see what we have. There we go. We have something that looks a little bit more like a calendar, but also at the same time, not quite. So let's make some changes here. Let's just first of all add some classes here to this div. So I'll do class name, and then we're going to do border rounded MD, maybe some padding, and let's see what this gives us. Oh yeah, and then text center, because we want to actually center the day inside of this div. There you go. This now looks a lot more like a calendar. It's a pretty basic one. Again, I'm not the best designer, I'm not the best like artist, but that's why I became a developer in the first place, but you get the idea, it's a calendar. Now, if you look at this, we have a problem, and I hope that you can spot the problem. The problem is that here, the first day of the month, the 1st of November, is on a Sunday, but if you go back here and look at the calendar, the actual first day of the month was on a Wednesday, and the month ended on a Thursday, whereas our month is ending on a Monday. So we have to fix this, and we have to account for the offset of when the specific day starts in that current month. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to try to be a little bit smart, and we're going to try to find a simple solution to this problem. So what we can do, we can use datefns to get the index of the first day of the month within that current week, right? So from 0 to 6. And then based off of that index, what I'm thinking we can do, we can just render out some empty days with no dates in them. And that's going to push everything to the right with the length of the starting day index of that first month. So for example, if our starting day is on Wednesday, our index is going to be 3. So that is going to create 3 empty cells, and it's going to put the first day of the month on Wednesday, and it should theoretically fix our problem. So let's go and do exactly that. Let's go back to our code. Let's come here, and then we're going to do const starting day index. That is going to be equal to get day from datefns, and we're going to pass it first day of month. And there we go. So get day is a function that will return to you the index of that day within a current week, and it goes from 0 to 6. So this is exactly what we need. And then we need to come here, and in between the weekdays and the days in month, what we can do, we can come here and then do array from, and then we can do length, and then we can do starting day index, and then we can map over this. And here we don't actually need any variable, we just need the index. So we'll do index, and we'll come here, and then for each we'll return a div. Let's let Copilot do the thing. And now there's 2 things here that we want to do, actually 3, because I need to spell this properly. So let's try it again. There we go. And now the other thing that we need to do is we need to be careful about this key here. We've given the index once again as a key, which again is fine if this is not going to change. If it does, you might want to rethink that. But the problem is there's going to be an overlap between the keys of this map over here and the keys of this map over here, because this is going to start index 0 and it's going to go 1, 2, 3. This is going to start index 0 and it's also going to go 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to have duplicate keys. So one easy way that we can fix this, there's many ways that you can do it, but I'm choosing to be lazy here, is just to give this instead a string and call this empty, and then we're going to give this the index like so, and now this will be always a different key because this is always going to be prefixed with empty. And then the second thing that we want to do, because these are basically dates but they're empty, they're not actually rendering anything, we can get rid of this div here and we can just close it directly like so. And then we'll also have to copy the same styles over here just to apply them, because it is going to be the same element. If we save this, go back to our application, now we have something that looks a lot more correct. We have 3 empty days, and then our month November is starting from Wednesday the 1st and it's ending on Thursday, which is exactly what we had here. This is now correct. Now, one improvement that we can make to this, and actually we should make this, is that currently there's no visual way to tell which is the current day, right? Currently it's the 24th of November, so this is our current day, but it doesn't show up differently in our UI. And I think for a calendar, especially if it's dynamic like this, it would make sense to show the current day in a different highlight just so that it's easily visual to notice. So we're going to go back to our code, and this is actually going to be a super easy change to do. The only thing that we need to do is where we're rendering each individual day, the only thing we have to do is instead of passing a string here as the class name, we can just pass it a function instead, and I'm going to use CLSX. That is the second dependency that I talked about in the beginning of this video. This just allows you to pass classes easily and also customize them by providing more than just strings. So I'm going to pass the string that we had before, and then I'm going to come here and I'm going to pass 2 different classes based on a Boolean. So I'm going to do here background gray 200. Whoops, what happened? 200, and that is going to be equal true only if the current date is today. So if is today, again, import this from date FNS. If is today day, then we're going to render out this class, and also we're going to do the same thing here, but now we're going to put text gray 900 only if the current day is today, right? So if I save this and I go back to our code, now our current day is highlighted. It's always going to show up as the current day, and it's going to be super easy to spot because it is visually different. Cool. So now there's only one more thing that we need to handle, which is really cool. We're almost done, and that is to handle the actual events. So reminder, if we go back here to our app, this event calendar should receive an array of events. Each event should have a date property and a title property, and we should render out these individual events on the specific days that they are on. Right, so let's do that. Let's come to our event calendar. Let's first start, as always, because we are working in TypeScript, to define our types. So I'm going to come here and then do interface event. And then this is going to have date, title, string, super simple and super self-explanatory. And then we're going to want to define the props of the event calendar. So interface, event calendar, props. And then here we're going to give this an array of events, right? Like so. And here we have to come and do events and then event calendar props, and there we go. Now our app is no longer complaining because our event calendar component is now properly typed to receive events. All right, so now we have our events. They're properly passed here to the event calendar. How do we actually render them in our calendar? Well, there's 2 ways that you can approach this. There's the performant way and there's the unperformant way. I'm actually going to show you both ways just because I think that it's really, really important. So let's start first with the unperformant way. What you would do is you would come here when you're mapping over days in month. For each specific day, you can actually get all of the events for that specific day in here and just render them, right? It's super simple. So let's do it. Let's come here and then we're going to do event.filter, and then we're going to do event and then is same day, import this from date FNS, and then we're going to do event.date and then day, right? That is going to filter us all of the events that are the same day as this day right here that we're currently rendering. And then what we can do, we can just map over them, event, and then we can just return here, return div event.title, and here again, let's give the key event.title just because I'm lazy and I don't want to come up with another key. What's the error here? Let me see. Type event is not assignable to React node. Why not? I fixed it. I'm not exactly sure what it was. I just had to rewrite it, but this is what we have. For every single day that we're rendering, which keep in mind, we're already mapping over once, so we're already in one level of iteration, we're checking all of the events and then we're filtering for the events that are on that given day, and then we're mapping over the events to actually render out our events in our calendar. If we go back to our application, we see that our events are exactly here. We have one event on the 18th, one on the 23rd, and one on the 27th. This is 6 days ago, this is yesterday, and this is 3 days into the future, which if we go back to our application, this is exactly what we had, 6, 1, and 3, right? So this works, this is correct technically, but it's not performant. This actually has a time complexity of 02, just because we're doing map here, and then for every iteration of this one, we're doing a filter and a map again, so we have a time complexity of 02. We can do better. So what we can do to improve this, instead of doing all of these filters and map here directly inside of this outer map, which is again unperformant, we can come here to the top of our component, we can create an object for the events with their dates as keys, and then we can access that object here inside of this map, and that's going to be a lot more performant. So let's do exactly that. And disclaimer, I am going to use something directly from ChatGPT for the simple reason that we have to use reduce for this, and every time that I work with reduce, I always make a mistake. And honestly, if I was to do this for real in a real application, I would just use ChatGPT, because now I've kind of defaulted to it. It may be a good thing, maybe a bad thing, but it is what it is. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to come here and do const events by date, and that is going to be equal to use memo. We're going to need to use memo here. I'll tell you why in just a second. And this is going to return the beautiful thing that we copied from ChatGPT. Let me do it here. Let me paste it here. And we need to give this a dependency array of events. And there we go. We have our events by date using this beautiful piece of code right here. So essentially what this is going to do is it's just going to take all of the events and then perform the .reduce method on it. And it's going to create an object that has a key of string that is going to be the actual formatted string that we have here, and the event here as the actual value. So then when we're mapping over here for each of our days, we can just access that object through its index by the date here. And then if there is an event, we just render it, otherwise we don't. And the reason why we're using use memo is because we don't want to perform all of this unless absolutely necessary, which is only when events change. So only if we have different events do we want to then rerun this. Otherwise, just do this and return the cache, return the memo as value, and this is going to be a lot more performant. So then what we can do, we can come here, we can remove all of this that we had here, just kill this, and then here at the top right before the return, we can first do const date key. That is going to be equal to, there you go, Copilot is the best, right? This is going to be the key that we're going to try to access our event by. And then we're going to do const today's events. And again, let Copilot do its thing. We're going to try to access the actual events of today by the date. Otherwise, we're just going to return an empty array, right? And this is going to cover our case where if we have events, we show them here. If we don't show them, but we can always map over this variable right here. So then we can come here and we can do today's events dot map, and then we can do event, and then we can just do as we had it before, return div key event.title, and then event.title, and we need to close this squarely brackets right here. And there we go. We have exactly the same functionality as we had it before, but now it's no longer a time complexity of 02, but we fixed our performance problem. So now if we go back to our application, to our calendar, we see the events on the same place that they were before, which confirms to us that our code is working exactly as we had it before, but now we have much better performance, right? So this is great, and I really like to see this in a React application. Now, the last thing that I maybe want to do, and actually I think I should do this, I just want to change the styles here of all of our events just so that they look a little bit more visually obvious, because right now we're kind of not sure if this is an event or something else. So that's really simple. We can just come here where we're rendering each individual event. We can come here and add class name. We'll do background green 500. We'll do rounded MD, and then text gray 900 to match this value right here. If we save this, go back to our application, our events are now looking super, super cool. And this is a pretty functional, pretty fully working event calendar. And I'm actually super proud of this. If you go to the repository, which again, the link is going to be in the description, you can actually get the app here. You can actually also get the solution in this SRC folder. It's this file right here. You can get the solution. And also, if you want, you have some challenges that you can do. They range from like beginner to really advanced, like creating some basic components, right? That's super simple, but then handling events that would span multiple days, right? How would you do that? How would you create an event that can span multiple days? I'll leave that up to you to figure out. That is where I'm going to stop for this video, because now I consider this challenge complete, and we done it. We built successfully an event calendar in React, and we should be proud of ourselves. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more of these types of videos, please do let me know. Please do leave a subscribe, also leave a like, because this is a new series that I'm trying to do, and your feedback is very much appreciated. Also, if you want to watch a different video of mine, you can click here. I'm sure that's super awesome because YouTube is directly the one that is recommending it to you. And with that being said, my name has been Darius. Thank you so much for watching this video. It really means a lot. Thanks again to Bright Data for sponsoring this video. It also means a lot. It is really appreciated. And I will see you all in the next video. Ciao, ciao.